Hi, this is the first edition of the podcast on Space Village and people that are making a big difference and also helping others on their journey into becoming space robust. And we'll provide further definition of space robust as we put more sessions into this. More important, I would like you to meet Cliff Beek. He is a pleasure to talk with. He runs a very novel concept. He runs the Constellation Corporation. He's a very accomplished person, traveled uh, all over the world. He has I'm going to call it a passion for uh, making business with many different countries. But really, really important is his over arching views of the world and the way that, in this case, cybersecurity can also be done in space. Is very humble on saying that some of the ideas were not his, and also presenting you new pathways into how do you become a good company in space? How do you overcome obstacles? He also presents in this conversation a lot of his experience in the field, in the sector. So enjoy.
Thank you.
So I started recording. Cliff, thank you very much for coming to the interview, conversation, talk. Gonna have a blast, I'm sure, because you've got so many good stories between volunteering, Richard Branson on your side, on your left side in one of the interviews, also your connections across the world and your volunteering life. I want to start first of all, for thanking you. Okay, this started from the book from Robert Jacobson, and looking into your work and your ideas, and then I was a bit, I was going to say cheeky. I designed the process calling cybersecurity. I said, well, let's hope that you don't say the process is wrong. But thanks for being here.
Sure. Gonzalez, thank you for this opportunity to talk to you. It's my pleasure to be here, and happy St. Patrick's Day. Today is March 17th, so I'm wearing some green, so to have the Irish. So
Okay. That's a good point. I'd like to start from the beginning. That is, how did you arrive to the idea of your company? How did you get to put cybersecurity in here,
yeah.
and product as unique? And I also would like for you to talk about the team.
Okay.
But I would say these are separate things because I think they believe that they are in different realms. But where are you at?
The concept of securing data in off-terrestrial networks was not my idea. It was not an original idea that I had. It was actually founded by a gentleman by the name of Hushan Khan, who is an entrepreneurial individual and lives in Los Angeles, California. And I was introduced to him through a mutual friend from Space Systems Loral. And we sat down and met at one of the conferences where most people meet at the Satellite 2015. Going back a couple of years or a few years.
Okay.
He talked to me about this idea of using geostationary satellites to secure data, to get it off the ground. And I listened to the story and I thought it was an interesting story. And then the question I asked him was, how much capital do you need to raise? Which was exorbitant. I mean, it was close to $1 billion. And I thought at that time, that was going to be a very difficult lift and a challenge, because there's a lot of data storage companies on the ground that have lots of security built in. But then as we shook hands and left, and I went on about my business and went back to a company that I have in Singapore, I was learning a lot about the cybersecurity hacks and the breaches of well-known retail stores, hospitals, the ransomware that occurs, data that's getting, I guess, hijacked in motion. And I started thinking about this company, Cloud Constellation. So to fast forward it, I got involved with them. And my biggest point was, look, we need to bring the capitalization down to under $500 million. And then we need to engineer this so that we don't have to run into a lot of the regulatory hurdles that you run into when you're trying to compete globally. So we came up with this design. But the most important thing about your initial question is, why space? Well, when you think about the space and you think about, the physical separation from Earth, if you can put data and move it efficiently in what I would consider like a Dropbox, where you can put this data where it has very limited access from public infrastructure. I mean, that's the most sort of vulnerable communication networks, is your DNS servers, your entry points where you get hacked. And if you can take vital, sensitive, security, highly secure information, and you want to move it globally, the last thing you want to do is push it out through a public ISP that traverses, multiple peering points and interconnection points globally, because that's really where I think the vulnerabilities are. So our idea was to get it off the ground and move it in space. And so we basically, when you mentioned our team, there was a group of engineers who are quite capable, who have had experience in building satellites, communication satellites, the communications component of satellites. We're able to have conversations and attract them and say, look, this is what we'd like to do. We would like to make space-hardened managed memory systems to store data, and not large cold data storage. This is data in motion. This is short-term data at rest. So then we began to explore who has those skill sets and who's capable of bringing this together. And quite honestly, it was not that big of a, of having to develop any real original IP. A lot of this is available in the market. You just need to be able to find the various components and find a system integrator that can pull it together for you.
And use the word system integrator. Is beyond the hardware, do you have people that play that role as system integrator, or were you like the architect and then you've got someone that ensures that the systems are integrated and performing?
Well, for most companies, particularly my role, we're entrepreneurial, and we work on a very, small budget to get started. So you do a lot of that yourself. So everyone has a specific role. So we have, for my particular role, I'm more involved on capital formations, raising capital to support it, developing the business plan, finding, where in the market can this product really provide a solution that makes sense, having conversations. I mean, so you have two groups. You have your engineers who can just demonstrate, how they would build this thing. And then you have your commercial, someone like myself, more on the commercial side. Okay, well, if we build it, that's great. You guys have this wonderful opportunity to build this and idea, but who's going to use it? Who are our customers?
Yes,
so you have to validate all parts of it. So in terms of that, I spent a lot of time, there are very capable large system integrators out there that you could go to if you have a checkbook with unlimited funds.
Yes.
We're very opportunistic. We do a lot of this in the beginning ourselves, and you do a lot of your own system integrating. You're able to try to find vendors. You do a lot of your own research. You call a lot of people. You ask a lot of questions. And then there are a number of system integrators and manufacturers that are positioned to do this for you once you're funded. But your biggest challenge is you've got to build your business case, identify a solution that you're solving. The biggest thing is, how are you changing the world with your product? I mean, what makes this different? Just because you have a great mousetrap doesn't mean you're going to catch more mice.
Yes.
And you need to be able to demonstrate that what you are doing makes a lot of sense, and it changes the way behavior in the commercial environment, and it actually provides a value-added service. So there's there's the engineering component with the system integration work, finding the right solutions, the right vendors at a price point that makes sense. And you've got to find a vendor who really believes in your project, who kind of looks at this and says, I believe in this, I'm going to commit my time to it. And then you've got to find, again, the most frequently asked question is, well, who's going to use this project? I mean, who's going to buy your service? And that became very clear after, and we can get into that, but that was identified early, and we were able to demonstrate it. And so the tough thing again is really finding the right vendors to source the components, because we were using optical lasers, or we planned to use optical lasers for our inter-satellite links between our low Earth orbit satellites. And we can take a moment just to talk about what that means. Is our project is originally to build 8 to 9 low Earth orbit satellites in a circular orbit at the equatorial plane, each of those creating a ring and interconnected through optical lasers. And so that's a challenge in itself, to be able to accomplish that and find vendors who actually can deliver that. There are plenty of groups who are developing free space optical lasers for space. Not a lot of them have been deployed for interspace communications. And then inside of those LEOs, we're hosting in our payload about 3 to 5 petabytes of data storage for managed memory storage and some compute capabilities. So, the components of what we are building were not a broadcast satellite. We're using space and satellite components to protect and move data globally, but we're not providing a broadcast network. We're not providing connectivity to rural markets. We're actually a closed user network where access to our network is what we call dark. You have to be authenticated to be on the network. It's very secure. What we're selling and our idea is to move secure communications and data in a safe environment. So it's a little different, but yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of things that you need to kind of pull together. So system integrators are important, but you also have to be in a position to pay for them too. So
okay. You mentioned a lot of the points when I was researching on cybersecurity because of your prompt and because of your company. A lot of the 14 or 21 control points of ISO 27000. And for the folks that are listening, ISO is a big organization where people come together and say, oh, this is a standard. We agree that every word in the standard means this, or at least we agree that it's exactly this.
Yeah.
And in particular, the 2700 brings the requirements for information management and the derailing of risk. Did you have, because ISO is more of an European thing, okay? Although it's all over the world, I know what I've seen is that ISO is more used in Europe. Overall, in your experience in the world, do you use standards to help on the business case, or is it more likely specify what they need and then you tailor the solution, or is it an hybrid of both?
Well, because this is a security project, standards and FISO is critical. You have to be in compliance, and you need to demonstrate and certify that you have certifications. You're talking about dealing with financial institutions, governments. You're managing some very sensitive information. So standards, whether they are global, and you need to comply and demonstrate that you are actually, in compliance with those standards. Now, to accomplish that, as a company like ours, we engage with, the best and the brightest, vendors that we can find. So for our security purposes, we engage with Thales Security, which had purchased Gemalto. Gemalto is one of the largest SIM card access management, group in the world. And so we were able to get their attention, and they found our project to be of interest to them. They wanted to get into the space economy, and they're in the security business. So we formed a partnership where we would work together. They would help us with our platform of, our engagement for exchange of security keys with customers, set up that platform for us. So when we walk into a customer, your first customer you sit down with, one of the questions that would be, are you compliant with these standards, these global standards? And as soon as we say, well, we're having that done for us, managed by, for in this example, Thales Security, formerly known as Gemalto, it was like, okay, that's the platinum seal for that, and it usually helps to establish credibility and mitigate that sense of risk if there is a sense of concern from the customer. So yes, absolutely, standards are important, and especially when you're dealing with the types of information that our customers are handing to us. And I should qualify that because we don't get access to their data. We never have access to their data. We're flying these particular, what I would call data vaults, and all we're doing is providing the telemetry and the path. We don't have no access to their data. We don't have the keys to access their data. It's all managed by themselves through their own encryption services. So all we're doing is managing the platform so that it stays synchronized, it's flying properly, and if there are any issues, we're able to take care of those from an operational perspective.
That's a good point too, because I was trying to think, but do you get access to the data? No, you don't.
That's part of it. I mean, there's all the things when you talk about compliance, there's all these things like data protection laws, GDPR, that was established mostly in the European Union, that we have to certify that the data that's being hosted is not also being replicated in another country, that we're certifying that data is not being cached to another server off the network. So you think about it, we're in space, we're in this jurisdiction that is off planet, but we can certainly certify that we're not hosting that customer's data in another country. So that customer is not being subject to perhaps being subpoenaed or the jurisdiction of another potentially hostile country. So because that data is not traversing or ending up in a server that's being cached in another country. So again, from compliance and from a data protection compliance, the concept of having this constellation is kind of unique.
It is, and I'll get back to this because I lots of things came up to my mind, mostly because of yours. I'll go to the question right now. I'm derailing the script, but this just came, and I need to ask you this. You, in your path, you have been between the US, Middle East, many other countries. And what you just described, since you have a constellation up here and subpoenaed and other, that is, how did you get to this idea that I need to be global instead of I need to be local?
The economy is globalized. We're not, just operating in a vacuum in one country. Every country has dependencies on other countries for manufacturing, for banking. You think about just your government has probably over 100 ministries or embassies around the world. So there's a lot of secure communication that go between those enterprises. You have financial institutions that have large headquarters, perhaps in New York, London, Hong Kong, Sydney, Australia, where they have branch offices located around the world that send transactional data. So, our business model is global. It has to be global because, if it were just a domestic business case, they could use one satellite up and down, no double hopping. Exactly. So for us, it's a global solution.
As an entrepreneur, what is the best practice that you recommend? If there is one, you can talk about one. Yeah. But
there isn't any one particular. Things work differently for other people. Some people are, people think, oh, they're so lucky. But luck has something to do with it, but sacrifice, hard work probably has a little bit more to do it. Recognizing an opportunity is probably the key sort of differentiator. But what you try to do as an entrepreneur is learn as much as you can about the market or the industry or what you're trying to create. Learn as much as you can about a market and where the friction is and what are you trying to solve. And so you have to begin a dialogue. You've got to go through a complete spectrum of conversations, sort of this concept of doing your due diligence. You want to talk to managers, people at all different levels, executives, middle management, marketing, entry level professionals, to find out, parts of the business that may make sense to you and understand where your risks are. I mean, you need to understand as an entrepreneur, how risky or likely of success versus, is this going to be just, a pipe dream that's just not going to happen. So you've got to kind of be smart about what you're doing and trying to assess opportunities. But with that said, what makes a difference is your commitment to a project, your focus, determination. I mean, it comes with sacrifices. It comes with a lot of different struggles. But I've never met anyone who's been successful that hasn't failed at something or hasn't struggled with like when you think of a really successful company, when you think about let's say an entrepreneur like an Elon Musk or SpaceX. Well, he's been doing this way before the last 5 years. He started probably, I don't know the exact date, but in early 2000, building these ideas, and you're seeing all the fruit of the successes now. But there are multiple times in the success of that business that no one is an overnight success story. It takes a lot of effort, sacrifice, and determination to be successful. So there isn't, and everyone works differently. There's different solutions for others. But one thing I can tell you that seems to be the common thread is focus, don't get distracted, determination, and being able to get through the tough times, being creative, having a strong, fortitude to you get dealt bad hands sometimes, and brush yourself off, get up, and start again.
How do you do that for yourself? Because I'm sure this pathway has been.
Yeah.
How do you keep focused?
Today we're really, we're have been in lockdown. We're starting to gradually come out. We see a lot of this. We're all concerned about the infection rate of COVID. We, concerned for our families, for our friends, for our neighbors. The economy has been like, for the service part of the industry has been, disastrous. And so there's certainly been a lot of obstacles and challenges, but we get through it. The world is finds a way to get through it. And I think the most important thing that you have to do is you have to understand your limits. And so, like for me, like when you say when things get frustrating, find other interests. So exercise is important. Getting away from your desktop and getting outside, go for a walk, go for a run, do something physically active that takes your mind off of it and kind of helps you to refresh. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, I basically, when I'm frustrated or whatever, kind of push away from the desk, because we're all inside now.
Yes.
Put on a mask, go outside for either a walk or a run or whatever you do, and you come back and then, you kind of clear your mind. One other thing that I would also encourage entrepreneurs and others is never underestimate the power of a good night's sleep. I mean, there were times in my life, obviously traveling around the world, I would be operating on 3, 4, 5 hours of sleep from an international flight, getting into, the Asia Pacific region, jumping into a meeting. But I'm able to tell myself, hey, I've been traveling for like 20 hours. You need to recognize that you're tired, or you need to have some understanding of your capabilities or your limitations. So the next thing that I would encourage any entrepreneur and anyone who's doing this is never underestimate the need or the power of getting a good night's sleep. Sleep is not accumulative. It's not like, well, I'll sleep on the plane or I'll sleep 2 hours the next day. It doesn't work like that. You have to be fresh, and you have to make sure that your thinking is clear. And so that's an important part of it too.